Damn, son, where'd you find this?
People don't be offended by the truth. They be offended because you called out the truth. Simple as that. They don't want to hear any other narrative that makes them look bad.
One thing I can't stand at this big grown age is somebody who acts like cause and effect does not exist. Like, yes, your actions caused this outcome. Yes, what you did lit the match. Like, why are you surprised and playing victim?
Guys, Chico, they never lie.
That's how you know somebody doesn't respect you. They listen to reply, not to be understood. They cut you off. They minimize what actually matters to you. They laugh at your boundaries, and then they call you sensitive when you try to hold the line. They show up late. They cancel last minute, forget the things you've told them, because in their world, your time, your energy, even your voice aren't a priority. They're just an option. You see, there are two kinds of people. Those who adjust when they realize they've actually hurt you, and those who expect you to adjust so they don't have to change. You don't need to be disrespected loudly to be disrespected deeply. Sometimes you'll see it. It's just in their tone, in their patterns, in the silence after you're known. Respect isn't what they say when they're watching. It's how they act when they think you'll tolerate it.
I know the art of fight, I know the art of war. That's all I ever studied. That's why I'm so feared. That's why they feared me when I was in the ring. Because that's all I was an annihilator. That's all I was born for. And now those days are gone. It's empty. I'm nothing. I'm working on feeling the art of humbleness. Can you be with me? That's the reason why I'm crying. Because I'm not that person no more. And I miss them.
Yo. What up? We got a special episode tonight, man. How's everybody doing? Peace, blessings, glory, praise, and honor to the Most High. Welcome to the House of Keys. This is different than the typical podcast. On these episodes, we do one-on-one interviews with poets, with writers, singers. If you are in the artist lane, this is where we tap in. We talk about life. We talk about what brought you here, your ambitions, your goals, your dreams. Chef already knows the vibe. He was the first to drop on this particular series. Praying that I get to lock in a few more, you know what I'm saying? Tonight we got Sydney on the chopping block. She's been here officially a year, you know what I'm saying? And things about that time, we have that session, you know what I'm saying? So do me a solid, make sure you show some love. Let me bring this up too. This is how you can reach out to her. That barcode up there, that QR. Y'all want to continue to be tapped in with her. That's her digital footprint. Sid, what's up?
Hello. Doing pretty good. I've been following all the stuff that's happening in the political sphere, so I've been quite enjoying what I've been seeing. And yeah, that's been my day, mostly cleaning up my house and listening to speeches and watching the results roll in. So it's been a pretty good day.
I know you salivating.
Mm-hmm.
Salivating. Oh, yeah. We all want some different results.
I mean, the fact that you flip seats in Mississippi says a lot.
how did we get here? 2025 November. We about to go into a whole entirely different year. It's been a cluster of pretty much everything from start to finish. We've had people come and go. Um, Introduce yourself to the world. Um, this ain't no chaos theory. This is just us kicking shit, talking, running it up. You know what I'm saying? Talk to the people.
Well, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Sydney. I am a poet. I'm trying to be an artist, even though I haven't kept up with that lately. I am primarily a writer. I love to talk about science issues, political issues, historical stuff, psychology. I'm just interested in, number one, learning and teaching through my writing, and also helping to try and make the world a better place through educating. My particular topics of interest are climate change and environmental topics, but I also do delve into other areas, especially because, things are all connected, and the whole aspect of billionaires are related to the environment, and politics are related to the environment, and they're all interconnected. So I just like to understand how the world works so I can, one, help make the world a better place with my writing, but also connect with people, because I know that a lot of people out there are hopeless and feel like nobody's listening to them, feeling like nobody understands them. And I'd love to be a voice for change, especially in a world like this where voices are very quickly stifled. So, yeah, I'm also a mother of two kids. If you've watched the stream, you've probably seen at least one of them pop up in the stream. I have a very vibrant redhead and a little boy with a very crazy mop of hair. Both of them have crazy hair. Probably gotten from me and my husband. My husband has the curls. I have the everywhere-ness. And I'm also a military spouse, so I'm connected to the veterans community and the military community as well. My mother-in-law, who's been on here a couple times, she is also there. My family and my husband's family are from a long line of military members. She served, her husband served, her parents served, his parents served, and down the line. My mom was in the Air Force. I don't think my dad served, but I know his dad and mom served, I think, my grandparents. And I believe my mom's dad served as well. So yeah, deep ties with the military as well. Speaking of which, even though he passed away in 2017, today is my dad's birthday. So it's appropriate to be able to share a bit about myself, even though he's no longer here. So
Thank you for that well articulated introduction. You've been a very integral part of the discussions that we've had up here, from science to political knowledge and information and insight. What gave you the desire and the passion to get into the fields that you got into? What was your upbringing like, and what's something that motivates you the most when it comes to these type of conversations in general?
I grew up in a household where education was promoted above all else. My mom was very much like, you focus on school, you do well in school, you go to college, you get a good job, because in this world, that's basically where you're going to be successful. I went to a private Catholic school for 3rd grade through 8th grade, which was pretty. I think it contributed quite significantly to my later success, like my moral development and whatnot, because being in a public atmosphere is definitely different. I've always been more interested in books than people. So I haven't really strayed away from that aspect. But I think being involved in religion and developing my spirituality did help a lot in me staying on track. And it still definitely plays a role in my writing today. But I've always been a huge nerd. I've always been a book nerd. I'm sure you probably noticed from my podcast that I have my fair share of information at my fingertips. You can also find me Googling stuff all the time, like to the point that sometimes a question will come up and I'll immediately pull out my phone and my husband will just be like, you don't need to look it up right now. I was also that kid that, like, in class you have the lessons and I was secretly like reading my book under the table, hiding out. My mom was also getting on me in my early years for reading at the kitchen table. And she's like, oh, you need to participate in dinner. And I was more interested in my book. But I've always had this interest. I've always had an interest in writing. I've always had a deep love of learning, partially because I'm on the spectrum. I have always been, as I said, more interested in reading than in people. And as you know, I love talking. I love teaching. That's always been in me. Even as a kid, I was really interested in working with like younger kids in my school. We had like a buddy system where like the kindergartners were buddies with the 3rd graders, 1st graders with the 4th graders, so on and so forth. And I just loved working with them and feeling like I was playing a part in making them feel comfortable, teaching them things, helping them along. So I've always gotten a lot of gratification out of helping people, educating people, making people feel better about themselves. So that really ties in with my writing. And I've always had this deep urge to influence through my writing. I've always dreamed of being a quote unquote famous writer. I originally was more interested in non-fiction books. But after I got into high school, it gravitated more towards educational writing, scientific writing. At the beginning, a lot of my writing was more like historical based. I hope you can't hear my kids right now. They're fighting. I started off with, I always had a love of history, partially because I hated living in the modern world. I always wished that there was more nature around. I hated the suburbs. I hated having just a tiny little backyard with fences. Like, I always dreamed that I could have like that house on a hill surrounded by just like the woods. And so I really like withdrew, I guess, into historical books and a lot of like either fake or real like diary style writings of people going through different historical times. My most favorite time period was like through the 1800s up through like the 1930s, 40s. And so that deep interest in history made me really interested in writing stories like that myself, where I'd write a lot of stories of people my age going through different times of history. In like 5th grade, I didn't publish it because I was really afraid of the backlash, especially because I was well aware of my skin color and what it meant. But I had a book about this girl that got me. I was 12. Keep in mind, I wrote a book about a girl that got a slave for a birthday present, and when she saw how they were treated, and the girl was like her same age. When she saw how she was being treated, she decided to go against her family and help her escape to the north. So that was one of my first ones. I also did one on what time period was it? I did another one. I just can't remember which time period it was. I also had another that I've always been interested in, like dystopian type ones as well. But yeah, I love to like delve into historical novels. Oh, that's what it was. It was more of like colonial time period, and or like early America. But yeah, I've always had this interest in history, and that's kind of where my writing started. But as I started to learn more about the world around me, that's when I started to really develop my interest in science. Like as a little kid, I always loved animals. I loved the ocean. I was obsessed with like marine mammals and fish and all that stuff. The ocean. I wanted to be a marine biologist for as long as I could remember. But as I got a little bit older, 2004 specifically is what triggered my interest in climate change and environmental science, because I went to this, it's called, I don't know if you're familiar with her, but Sally Ride. She was involved in the space program, and she ended up starting a program for kids, particularly women or children, girls, to get them interested in sciences. And we went to one of her events, which was focused on like the importance of wetlands. And one of the tables there was about hurricanes and why wetlands are important for protecting coastlines during hurricanes. And at that table, they were talking about global warming and how it was going to start impacting hurricanes. And they mentioned a hypothetical storm that like would come into Louisiana and it would destroy the area. And they specifically said that it would overwhelm the levees, which were not built to withstand certain amounts of water. And that was 2004. And then 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit. And that was the moment that I was like, it made it real for me. And it instantly, like, I was just, from then on, I would be researching all of that science. I just wanted to know, because I'm like, they predicted that. I want to know what else there is. I want to understand the science. I want to see what else could be happening. And of course, that snowballed into who I am now and all the information that I've been able to gather over the years. I've always been obsessed with storms. Part of the reason I liked the 1850s or so, like the prairie, the travel west, I was really into the American Girl dolls, and one of the American Girl dolls was Kirsten, and she lived in 1854. And in one of the books, when she was traveling west with her family, they saw a tornado. And I don't know if it was that got me interested in the tornadoes, or if I was already interested in the tornadoes and so it piqued my interest because it was a tornado. But I do remember, like, in early age, I was interested in storms. Backtracking a small bit, when I was 2 or 3, it was the winter of 1997, so I was about 2.5. That's my earliest memory. I experienced the massive storms that happened in 1997 due to the El Nino. It was a super El Nino, and it was one of the worst storms in California history. And I remember wanting to go outside, and my babysitter said, you can't go outside because you'll blow away. And I remember being disappointed. Like, I wanted to go outside in the storm and experience the weather. So I've always had this interest in stuff like that. Earthquakes as well. Living in California, I was raised to be aware of earthquakes. In probably middle school, I became interested in fires because I had a friend that I worked for. She had a horse farm, and she had a house fire, and so I became interested in that. So my disaster experience really blossomed in my early years. And then by the time I got to high school, that's when I started taking like the pointed classes, like the AP classes. And I remember I think it was my junior year, I had to choose between psychology and AP environment. And at the time, I forgot exactly what made me choose, but I think it was because I wanted to be a marine biologist. So I'm like, I'll pick AP environment. And reading the book Sylvia by Rachel Carson was really what got me onto the environmental education track. It's when it really solidified the damages that we were doing to the planet in a more like tangible way. I was able to see all of the different, and it was also like emotional because in that book it details in tremendous detail all the ways that we've done damage to our planet and all of the ways that it affects us as well. And so that was what kind of opened my mind to recognizing the severity of what happened and really put me on the track of wanting to be a scientific writer, because her book started the first environmental movement. Like single-handedly, she triggered the largest movement in history in the United States. And the protests that happened with that first environmental movement to this day are still the largest gatherings in history. It was even larger than the No Kings protest. Give me 1 second. Hey, go downstairs. Go downstairs. Kids. You too. Go on. Man, it can be so loud sometimes. So that really triggered my interest in, like, I saw what she did and I wanted to do that too. Like, I wanted so badly. I mean, early on, of course, it was motivated by fame, because what kid doesn't want to be famous for whatever reason? But I really just craved to be important for that. Like, I wanted to be that person that could be pinpointed in history, like, you did this, you made a difference. And because I've always had such an interest in writing, I felt like that was where I could make my biggest difference. And once I got to college, I did kind of fall apart a bit in my track. I originally was going to do marine biology because I wanted to be like a shark researcher. When I was 14 or 15, one of the shark weeks really like triggered my interest in sharks, because I guess this is kind of related to my interest in the little guy. I realized how much damage we're doing to sharks and the shark population, shark finning. I also was introduced to like plastic pollution, so I knew that was affecting the ocean. And so that's kind of where my marine biology for college kind of intensified. I thought that I was going to be like a marine researcher, scuba diving and stuff. But when I was 17, I went to get my scuba diving certification, and I literally did all the pool stuff. Oh my God, give me another second. Get downstairs. He's like, oh, your attention is elsewhere. Let me make as much noise as possible to see if I can get more attention. Anyway, I went to get my scuba diving certification, and I got to the like final test, and I have like an inner ear problem, I think, and it basically triggered vertigo. And so like the ground was above me and I was so disoriented and it freaked me out. I after that I didn't go back. I didn't want anything to do with scuba diving ever again. It was so beautiful underwater, but that was the most terrifying experience. So I that really crushed my dreams of being a marine biologist, and not to mention, as I said, in college, I really fell apart. My mental health around like 14, 15 had really started to decline because I have bipolar disorder, I have autism, so I have like sensory issues. And I was really struggling like socially, trying to manage. I have ADHD too, so trying to manage all of those classes, all the homework. It was just a huge struggle trying to juggle all of that stuff. I was still involved with the ocean, like I was volunteering at an aquarium, and I loved working with their sharks there. I had already had a really long history with this organization because as a little kid, I went to their summer camps and they had like, you were able to go in and see the marine mammals and help and like see how they train them and whatnot. So that was also another thing in my mind where I was like, oh, maybe I can like work with marine mammals. Like I got to pet their dolphins and a leopard seal, or not leopard seal, harbor seal. And so I had this deep interest in the animals. But once I got to high school, I really started to struggle with the math and the technical sciences like physics, chemistry. I think I have some form of like, there's like a math number version of like dyslexia. And I swear that I have something like that. Cause I like, when I look at math, it just does not make any sense to me. And so I started to really get discouraged. And once I hit college, my freshman year, I was in a really terrible roommate situation. She was a bully and weird. And like at the time I had like a self-harm issue, and she used to like pull up my sleeves to show my other roommate, that I was doing that type of stuff. And it just was a really uncomfortable situation. And then paired with the fact that I was taking college chemistry, college physics. No, that was the next year. Chemistry, pre-calculus, and some other stuff, or maybe calculus. It was math, and I really struggled with it. I ended up, I can't remember if I failed out or if I dropped out. But I basically was like, after that, I'm like, no, I can't do sciences. And for a while, I was just trying to struggle with figuring out what I wanted to do. I ended up choosing psychology because I only had to take statistics. And I went through and that was where I developed my interest in psychology. And it also helped me figure myself out. Through taking all of those classes, I started to identify like my real issues and how I could fix them and work on them and stuff like that. So it did actually help me, but it still didn't feel right. Like I thought of going into teaching. I thought of doing therapy. I thought of doing like various types of roles within psychology, but it just never felt right to me. And so I basically went through my whole college career just struggling to figure myself out, who I was, who my identity was. Like I had identity crisis after identity crisis. I just was really struggling with my mental health. I wouldn't say I almost didn't graduate, but I had to add another semester because I had to drop all of my senior classes in my last year, partially because my dad died in that year. But also I couldn't handle it. And so I ended up graduating finally. But it like I remember distinctly when I graduated, the first thing I said was I graduated with the wrong degree. And I, in the last like 2 semesters, I was contemplating like switching my major, but by then it was too late. Um, I never did the internship at SeaWorld because I was always against SeaWorld for how they treated the animals. Around 15 or so, I saw blackfish, and I was never interested in SeaWorld. I went there once when I was 17, but that was the last time I'd been there. Like, we literally live right down the street from from SeaWorld, and I have not taken my kids there. But I did do a lot I did the stuff with the Seymour Center, and I did there, actually, I have my button. I volunteered there from 15 to 18, and then in college I did their school program because they had like an in-classroom program for kids where you like teach them about the animals and stuff like that. So I also did that. So I've done quite a number of years with them, but I didn't work with SeaWorld. So once I graduated, I struggled with the idea, like I chose the wrong career. But out of college, I think it was 2018. So about a year out, or maybe 6 months out, I ended up getting a job at the Humane Society in Santa Cruz, the SPCA. And I was there as a humane educator, and I loved that job. That was a phenomenal job. I basically went to schools and taught kids different, like I did presentations about how to be kind to animals, how to properly take care of pets. We had one on like being stewards, like learning about different marine mammals, because my boss had also worked at the Seymour Center. She went to UC Santa Cruz and everything like that. And I ended up in that job, ended up also introducing my own classroom presentations. I made one on tide pooling, called Tactful Tide Pooling, which was about teaching kids how to be kind to the small animals they see on the beach. I think I started another one. I can't quite remember. But I love that job. But then around 2019, it was 2020, because it was literally like January of 2020, right before COVID. I decided to leave the job because at the time I thought my husband was about to leave for the military. He was originally planning on doing SEALs. And so I left prematurely. I say that because I probably could have gotten away with staying through COVID, because he ended up not joining right away because he had a leg injury, which kept him from qualifying for some of the physical things. So that's why he ended up switching to the program that he's in now. But I ended up I basically I haven't worked since that job. I tried to do some online work with this company, but I was just not interested. And so towards 2021, I think, or no, it was 2019. It was during COVID, 2020. Yeah, it was during COVID. I started, no, actually, sorry, it was 2019 because I was still working at the SPCA. But that was when I decided to go for my master's, because I still had that in my head where I graduated with the wrong major. So I'm like, well, what's the best way to get in the right area is to get a different degree. So I found an all online college that did environmental science. And so I ended up choosing that instead. And I ended up finally getting my master's degree in 2023 after my daughter was born. Literally, like, she was born in June 2023, and I got my master's degree in July 2023. So I literally spent doing my final master's project, like literally juggling a newborn. But it took me slightly longer to get the degree. I should have gotten it through like 2.5 to 3 years, but it did take me longer because I struggled to handle one kid because I had Everest, and I was literally living in a hotel room for a year because basically once McKinley did get into the military, Everest was born in 2021, and he left for boot camp in January of 2022. So Everest was only 6 months old. We had been living with his stepdad, but his stepdad was a piece of shit. So we ended up moving in with my mom for like 6 weeks, but we had a falling out with her because she's a bit extra and issues, but that would be a whole other episode. And then we ended up living with his cousin or brother for a short amount of time, and then we ended up living with his best friend for a short amount of time, and then when Mick left, I think, for boot camp, I stayed with his brother, and then so we basically went from San Jose to Southern California to Colorado to Sacramento, and then I went to Illinois when he was finally about to get out of boot camp. And so literally we moved like 5 times in the span of Everest's first year. And so that was incredibly stressful. And then while he was, after he got out of boot camp, while he was going through C school for a year, we lived in Illinois and Chicago. And when I was, it was March, I think. So I was like 6 months pregnant with Denali. We were basically like, we can't have 2 kids in a hotel. So we ended up moving out to, we ended up like putting an emergency housing request for San Diego. And so we basically got it right away and were able to move out to San Diego. So we've been in San Diego since March of 2023. And then, of course, she was born in June 2023. And that was finally when we were like settled here. That was when I finally was able to finish my master's degree. I had to like retake the capstone class twice. And I even, for my second time, I even had to request, like do a special request, because they basically were saying that I had taken the class too many times. And so I needed, I had to like, I don't know what you call it, but like I had to appeal their decision to not let me take the class because I had like hit my limit. And so I basically appealed to them like, look, I'm going to do it this time. I was in a flux this whole time before, but I'm settled down now and like I'm going to do it. So I ended up finally getting my master's. I did my capstone on climate change psychology and what contributes to climate change denial. And literally when I graduated, my first thought was, all right, this is it. I have that degree. I have the credentials that I need. So I'm going to start writing. And I made myself promise, or like I made a pact with myself. I was now going to be writing a poem a week, and I was going to create my website and just start putting my work out there. And in November of 2023, I got my Threads account, and I started to do my I think yeah, I think it was 2023 that I got my Threads account. And then for a year, I posted just on the website that I had made. And I literally had like a view, which was my mom, throughout that whole time. And it was kind of like, I was like, well, this isn't helping me. And so by 2024, that's when I decided to get Thread. It was literally like a full year. So by November 2020, or maybe it was a little bit before, like September, that's when I got the Threads and decided to start posting online. And literally, you were the first person that really like started reaching out to me. And I also started to do in-person events. And it was funny because I my first physical poetry event was on the day that I was supposed to do my first show with you. And it was on Halloween. I remember that. It was on Halloween. And I was I was literally going to do the poetry event on my way to the other poetry event. And I couldn't figure out how to get the link to work. And so I ended up missing it. And I remember at the time, I was like, I just messed up. Like, now I'm never going to be able to go on that show again. Like, I just ruined my reputation. And so I was like, well, maybe I can make up for it by just doing the show the next day. And that was the one on Monday with Jason. And I loved it. I was like, this is so fun. And so I just kept coming back. And it's cool because the poetry event that I did go to in person was with was at a farm, and the people that are the art gallery place that I kind of work for. I should be doing more with them right now, but I've been really distracted. But they were there and they met me there. So it felt like everything just fell together that month where I met them, I met you guys. And yeah, I mean, you've seen how I've developed in this past year, so I probably don't have to go deep into that. At this point, I have 3 books on the way. I started the class that I'm currently in for poetry in January of 2025. My writing really picked up around 2020, at the end of 2024, once who got elected, because I was like, oh, this is how I need to get my anger out. And I also really started to work on my climate change poetry. That's what I picked for the class, because I was like, well, I haven't done anything for this yet, so this is what I want to do. So yeah, the first book that I have, the psychology one, that one is a lot of the poetry that I posted through 2023 to 4. And then the political poetry is the second one, and then now I have the climate change one. But yeah, this has been a really crazy up and down journey. I really struggled towards the center, but it's been really up from 2023.
It has been a roller coaster, a hell of a roller coaster. And most people, when they grow up, they don't have such a loving and protective system around them. Yours seem to be a little more unique. Granted, you've had your hardships like many of us, but doesn't really sound like you was out there in the hood on some Malibu Most Wanted type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? As far as the string of events, just the timeline from then to now, I think it's dope. I think it's hella dope that you found something or a number of things that you were passionate about, that you were consistent about. You seem to have been more aligned with the things that you wanted to do versus me, because I definitely was all over the place for sure. It wasn't until the last couple years that I really started trying to lock into something that I felt passionate about. Um, how can I say this? Social media for you before you really got involved with it. Um, do you still feel the same way about it now versus before you started straying away from the actual book? Do you still have the same values for it? Do you still look at it the same way, or has anything changed, like for the better?
I did go through my dysfunctional periods, like in late middle school to like early high school. I was one of those, like, I needed attention, and so I was using Facebook to like make myself feel better, like, oh, I have 100 friends, like I must be special. And I was a bit like neurotic with it, where I was kind of like pseudo stalking people, because I would like try and find everybody from my past and try to be friends with everybody and whatnot. I ended up deleting my Facebook in 2016, I think, because I read that he was like, they made it so all of the information put on Facebook was going to be theirs, their intellectual property. And to me, I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. And so I deleted my Facebook, and that was when my hatred of Mark Zuckerberg really started. I'm holding on strong to that. And he just, I don't know, he seems like a skeevy little jerk, so I never trusted him. And then I had my Instagram, but I also kind of had my own issues with Instagram, where it was getting very like addictive to me. I even got to the point where I found myself just like doing this with my thumb, even if I didn't have my phone in my hand, just because I was spending so much time scrolling on Instagram. And I ended up deleting it because of the administration, because who donated to him, and I was just like, yeah, no, I'm done. But I've definitely transcended from the like using it for making myself feel better to now, like, I do use Blue Sky, and I use it quite a bit. I guess I kind of have a pseudo addiction to it because I do feel the urge to check it every day, but I don't also feel the urge to be on it all day. I will like repost a bunch of stuff. But to me, it feels more like a community than before. Like Facebook felt more like sterile, and like, I don't know, it didn't feel like anybody cared about me. But on Blue Sky, I enjoy it because it feels like I have a place there, and I enjoy being able to share information with people, and people are interested in that information, and it's pretty non-hostile. So I did enjoy that. I do kind of miss Threads in a sense, because it was a really cool place to meet other poets. I don't see that as much, but it also could be because my Blue Sky is more tailored to like political content. But you can't post like on Threads. I think you didn't really have a typing limit, if I remember correctly. Or I think I just posted like pictures and stuff. But I don't know, I haven't really gotten into posting my poetry on that website. But I still feel like it's a really cool community. I feel like I'm more of an influencer on there than I have on any of the other websites. And I didn't really gain much traction on Instagram. I was kind of getting it on Threads, but I feel like there's more people that actually like care about me there, even if I don't know them in real life. So I still love to use Blue Sky, and I feel like it aligns more with my interests because it is more of like an educational based platform rather than like Instagram, which is more for like, look at me, look at my food, look at my kids. Not to mention it's attached to Mark Zuckerberg. But yeah, I've definitely like come a long way with my social media use where I'm not as like dysfunctional with it. And I try to use it for more like constructive purposes.
I wish I had your discipline. I did. I walked away from YouTube for a couple months. My first channel. I walked away from Instagram before, but I didn't have a lot going on, and I think that's what made me come back to it. But if I actually had some motion, then I probably would still be away. But I think everything works out the way it's supposed to. You know, being in this space with these subjects and being able to express and talk about things that we typically can do on certain platforms, I find that this is very like up my alley. I'm not being held back. I can pretty much be transparent about stuff that I disagree with, and like I have fun with it. I thoroughly enjoy this compared to the abyss there is of working with bitter people who go out of their way to bring their misery to work and try to make everybody's life a living hell.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the politics. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
So the way that we ended up, like, that's why I'm still on Threads, because Threads is the reason why we are here today.
Mm-hmm.
Chef Arcana couldn't have gotten that done on Instagram. Instagram is very weird. Very, very weird, man. Let me ask you something. Were you a bad kid? Did you get into trouble? Did you did you blow up stuff? Did you steal and shoplift and like we did all the pretty cutesy stuff. You like I want to know if you was bad.
Yes, I was. On paper, I was good, but behind the scenes, I was bad. I was really good at hiding it, but because of my bipolar disorder, because of my issues with self-esteem and anxiety and all that stuff, I definitely had my issues. My early years were pretty bad, especially like middle high school. I very much had that attitude where I was attention seeking, but I was trying to be subtle about it, where I would hurt myself with the hopes that somebody would notice and come in and be like, oh, let me take you under my wing. Like, let me help you. Let me be there for you. Be that person. And I was always trying to find somebody that would basically just like, without any effort, they would be there for me. And I could just be crazy and whatever. And they would be like, oh no, you're okay. Like, sycophant, I guess. But yeah, I've like through my early childhood, I had an issue with shoplifting because, as I said, I kind of have a hoarder mentality where I just like, if it's related to what I like, if it looks cool, if it at the time, like if it was something that could get, wow, what's that? I would take it. Usually it was small stuff. Like I used to love to pull charms off of bookmarks, or like beads and stuff like that. I remember one time we went to see, I think it was Hearst Castle, and I like pulled broke tassels off the curtains because I was like, ooh, this is old. Like, this is antique. So I would like, if I thought that it was interesting to me or it had value, I would take it. I used to like steal my friends' stuffed animals I don't know how often I did it, but I do distinctly remember I stole my friend's, like, it was like a white weasel, or like, I think it was like a ermine or something, which is like a white ferret looking animal. And it was funny because I kept telling her like, oh no, my parents bought it for me. And she was like, I literally got it on vacation. Like, I know your parents did not buy this for you. And my last straw was when I was probably about 12. We were in Barnes and Noble, and they had this book. They'd have book sets that would come with like a little stuffed animal for the kid. They're usually like the board books. And I stole the stuffed animal out of the box. And I remember being paranoid because I'm like, I'm at the age where they could arrest me. And I knew that there were cameras and everything like that. And so I remember like the next time we went to Barnes and Noble, I like brought it back and I was like showing it to the camera and like showing them really obviously me putting it back. And I like made sure that, and after that, the only thing that I've stolen that I can remember since was a couple of years ago, we were at Walmart and I found this rubber snake in Walmart and it didn't have a tag on it. So I was just like, might as well just pocket it. Like there's no tag on it. So I took that, but I have since given up my criminal ways. Even though when I was 12, I did the friend's house that I told you about where her house caught on fire. We like, even though it was like blocked off and whatever, we still went in and like explored the house after it had burned just to see what it was like inside. I also, like, as I said, I've had a history of self-harm. I used to like hit myself and whatnot. I also had like a raging temper. Also before I forget, that was one of the things that I stole. It was from a bookmark and it used to have like a little thing on the top so you could like tie it to something. But I've kept this as my reminder, like, don't do that. Don't be that way. I've had that since I was like maybe 11 or 12. Yeah, I had issues with like self-harm and rage, anger. Like I basically, up until I got my seizure medication, I would have issues with like if I got overstimulated with something or I felt like the person wasn't listening to me, I would get like I couldn't communicate. I would just like completely lose my shit, and I could not. For a long time, I couldn't figure out why I was like that. And I remember early on, like when I was like 13, 14, I used to panic and think like, oh my God, what if I'm like actually serial killer? Like, what if I have like psychopathic personality disorder and I'm just like going to accidentally kill somebody one day? And it used to freak me out. So I was obsessed with watching like murder type documentaries and stuff like that of like just normal people and then also like the actual serial killers. But once I started learning psychology, I started to figure out that it was actually like that. So I got better at it, but I did have, I even had some recently, like in the past year, where I just could not control myself and like broke things, accidentally broke the old scale that my husband had because I like really angrily like put my foot down on it and it just shattered all over the place. I would also like throw things at the wall. I one time broke my phone. I think I have it. No, I don't. I think it's downstairs. But I like literally like bent it in half because I just like I had such a hard time controlling my emotions and my specifically anger. Like once I hit that edge, I just did not know how to come down because it took me a really long time. Like it literally was not until this year really that I was able to realize that just because you feel the emotion doesn't mean you have to express it. And so it took me a long time to figure that out. And that was also why I had a lot of issues with my mom because she just did not understand why I was acting that way. And when my dad got sick, our relationship really fell apart because I think I've mentioned it on the show, but just a quick synopsis. When my dad, he had a stroke And it basically, like, he had blood filling up the entire half of his brain, and it had been going on while he was asleep. So it'd been like that for hours. So it caused catastrophic damage. He was in a coma for 3 months. When he woke up, he was basically like a 2-year-old. He had to relearn how to use the bathroom, how to walk, how to talk, how to just exist. He lost his personality. He lost a lot of his memories. He was no longer able to do a lot of the things that he used to do, like reading, woodworking, bicycling, all that stuff. Like, he lost vision on his right side. Basically, like, that's where his vision stopped. So he was a completely different person once he came out, and having to deal with that all, I had to be in the hospital and see that. Like, he had tubes coming out of his brain, and like all sorts of like stuff attached to him, and the smells and everything. It was just awful. So my emotions really regressed from that. But also my mom's emotions fell apart because she lost her partner and she couldn't handle all that stress. She had to deal with insurance companies, and like, without insurance, it would, like, the ambulance ride alone was like $1.2 million. The ICU was like a couple $1 million. So she had to do all sorts of wrangling. They didn't want to pay for it. The doctors didn't want to treat him. They even kept, like, literally in front of me on his first day in the hospital, he asked my mom, "Are you sure your husband would want to live this way?" Basically hinting that she should just pull the plug and give up on him. And so we had a lot of issues getting along, especially my teenage years, because I just did not know how to communicate. I was begging for her help, but she didn't know how to help me. She would often, like, she didn't want to get me therapy, even though I wanted therapy. Because she was just like, "Oh, well, talk to me." And she was the type that would, like, brush things off and be like, "Oh, well, it's just because you're a teenager. Oh, it's just because blah, 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 blah." Like, she always had excuses for everything. And I just was always frustrated with her because I knew what I was experiencing was not normal, but she just would refuse to admit that I wasn't normal. And I would often get into fights with her, like physical fights. She would grab my hair and I would, like, hit her back. I remember one of the worst fights we ever had. She, like, grabbed my hair and, like, threw me on the ground, and I was, like, punching at her. And yeah, so I did have a huge temper, and it did kind of persist into my adult life. When I had my freshman year roommate, I did remember blowing up at her because she was the one that was, like, always in my business. And then she didn't understand why I didn't want to hang out with her all the time, because my social fuse was pretty short in college, since I was always, like, going to class and going to clubs and like school clubs, not clubs. And I just couldn't handle my emotions and stuff. It got a lot better once I got with my husband, because he put his foot down and he's like, "You are not going to self-harm around me." And so I stopped cutting once we got together, because he was basically like, "I'm going to leave you if you like keep hurting yourself, because people are going to think that I'm doing this to you." And so I stopped, and I still had issues with my anger. Like, there have been a couple instances where I, like, blew up at him, but it was only, like, a couple instances. He has come to understand where it comes from, so he knows a lot better how to deal with it, but also the medication I'm on has substantially reduced the rage that I have. So mostly all I do now is I just reduce the things that trigger my anger. So, like, I don't drink caffeine anymore. I stopped smoking because that triggered my anger if I went through withdrawals with it. Even though it doesn't really trigger my anger, I don't really drink either. I've never been a fan of drinking, but when I was in college, I tried to become an alcoholic because I thought it would get me attention. And then people would be like, "Oh, wow, you do have a problem." So I was not successful at becoming an alcoholic, thank God. But I did have like I sought out dysfunctional behavior because I thought that it would make people notice the problems more and being like, oh, you actually do have a problem. I get it. But so I have a lot of like the emotional issues. Luckily, I was too shy to actually do other things. Like I considered being like, oh, after I broke up with one of my boyfriends at the time, I remember for like a brief period of time, like a couple days, I was like, I should just become one of those, like, I'm gonna sleep around with everyone. And then literally like a couple days later, I'm like, what the that's stupid as fuck. Like, I don't want to do that. So I've been dysfunctional, but I also haven't fully committed to being dysfunctional because my number one, my anxiety, but also I've just been too intellectual to be dysfunctional because every time I would like get to a certain point, I would be reading about it and I'd be like, and I was more interested in understanding it than actually doing it. So yeah, I've had my moments, but definitely not as bad as other kids have been. Although to this day, I still swear like a sailor. So my best example, actually, or not my best example, but this just happened this morning. My husband's playing the new Pokemon game from on the Switch, and I don't know Pokemons. I don't know what it is. A big purple gorilla looking thing, and our son walks up. He's like, "Wow, that's a big ass monkey." And I was like, "Oh no, it's my fault." but yeah, I've had my issues, but at least I haven't really gone down the illegal path per se. Even though I've done my things, shrooms, weed, alcohol, stuff like that. So
I wish I had that sound bite. I might have to look for it. When I found out that you was a stoner, I was like, what? What?
Ironically, I started, like, obviously I started because of my husband. But the biggest benefit that I found was that it finally was what made me eat different foods. I used to be super picky. Like I was the pasta, chicken nuggets, nothing else type of girl. But once I started smoking, then I was able to eat spicy foods and I was able to start exploring different foods that I never wanted to do before. But yeah, sometimes I miss it, but sometimes I'm glad that I'm not dependent on it, partially because it's expensive as fuck, but also I did still have that paranoia, like we're not supposed to smoke in military housing, and just some places, if you smoke around your child at all, it can be considered child abuse. So there's always that in the back of my mind too. And then also I do have a phobia of getting cancer. And so the thought of like getting lung cancer was a bit anxiety provoking. Yeah, I miss the aspects of getting high, but I also don't miss the negative effects because I used to, I don't know if you remember, but like I still do because it's kind of like an anxiety thing, but I would clear my throat a lot once I was smoking because my throat was really dry. And then it would also make me like lose my thoughts if I was high. So in intellectual pursuits, it did not come in handy. And then I did have that dependence for a while. Like there was a time period where I was literally addicted to it and could not go without it. I also agree shrooms are amazing. If that was legal, I'd probably be doing that more. I use the herbological ones now rather than the like psilocybin ones, which are kind of nice, but I don't like it for, I mean, I don't like using it all the time for it sometimes causes my anxiety or anger to increase in the days afterwards. But there is this one that I really like, that it makes me like jazzed up to clean. And so I'll use it if I want to like get stuff in the house done. Because it literally makes me just want to go and go, like ADHD on steroids. But yeah, I remember my friend in Indiana, it's legal, and she got like, it was honey sticks with psilocybin in it. And that was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Like, I don't remember exactly what the breakthrough was, but I had one of like my biggest mental breakthroughs while using it. So if you're able to, I definitely recommend it. If it's not legal where you are, don't do it. I didn't tell you to do things illegally. I'm not advocating for you to break the law, but if it is legal where you are, I do recommend it.
Hey, y'all, you and Chef and what y'all can have that shit. I gave up smoking and all that. Yeah, that's real loud. That shit had me paranoid. I like the the positive sides of it was usually, well, your appetite, and it increases. Um, when I would watch TV, I felt like I was predicting every single segment. Yeah, we already knew this was going to come. Like, come on, bro. Like, like the commentary for TV would be hilarious, but on the other hand, the things that it did to my mind, man, it had me like, it had me looking like Smokey out here, man. Remember when he was in that chicken coop in a cage? It had me like that. I never wanted to go back to that feeling ever again. So I stay away from it. Alcohol had me apologizing way too much. Yeah, bro. I was no, leave me. I could not be out in public under the influence of either.
I don't understand how people can drive while drunk, because I like when I went to that concert last week, I had my first alcohol. I had wine. It was like a double glass of wine for the first time in like, I don't even remember the last time I drank. And I was so like like I was sitting in my seat and I'd like put my head on his shoulder because I just like my head, I couldn't sit up straight and my vision was all, I was like, how do people enjoy this? This is not fun. But I remember in my most addictive times, I used to think, I went through a period where I was like, I literally cannot write unless I'm high. And I used to think like, oh, I write better when I'm high. And then I had the realization like, the poems are still in my head. Like, it's not the alcohol or it's not the weed that gives me the ideas. Like, I don't smoke poetry. So the poetry is already in my head. So it was just making me feel like I wrote better because it would, I guess, bring the thoughts to my head. But once I stopped smoking, I was able to write sober again. So I haven't smoked in a couple months, I think. I don't remember exactly when, but it's been a bit. And yeah, I'm glad that I don't, because one, with the economy and everything, like that shit's as expensive as fucking groceries, and you can go through that in a week. And like if you're doing that on top of needing food, it just was way too much. So yeah, I'm glad that I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, bro. there are some good stories. I have a few, and I'm sure Sid has a few, and I'm sure you have a few.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even I'm not going there. But I think just seeing this side of Miss Sid, it needed to be done. It's nice to know that everybody on these platforms have a human side to them. Everybody is not just I have to say this by 6:42, and then by 6:45 I have to queue over here, and then by 7 p.m. I have to do this. We just humans, man. We have our ups and downs, our smiles and cries. Uh, and like I said, this was long overdue. Uh, I think this was special for this particular day. I forgot twice. You had to remind me a couple of times, like because I be constantly recording and I be having certain stuff happening, and I gotta. I be so
Yeah.
she be keeping me on my toes, man. I couldn't have got through the last year without her. Jason was definitely a huge part of this as well. But Sid, she been holding us down for the longest time. That's why I said Wednesday, you do your thing, and it's all love. Your pretty much family over here on this side of the internet. Uh, the whole face of Halloween thing, like that stung. That really stung with me. But you cheered me on. You were a big support. I was in a funky mood for a few days after that, and you talked me out of it. And it's like I appreciate that. I appreciate your time being here. Uh, and it's always going to be love on this side, man. So if there's anything that you want to leave the people with before we close out, I'm gonna turn the solo over to you and let you do your thing.
Okay. Yeah, a couple things. One, this one's more of a funny story. I wasn't drunk, but when I was 19, I got my first and only speeding ticket. I was going, I think I was going 80, or no, sorry. I was going 90 and a 70, and that's technically a felony, I think, or something like that. He ended up marking me at like 85, but I was panicked. I was freaked the fuck out because that was the first time I'd ever been pulled over before by myself. And I like I was literally like shaking and I couldn't talk because I was just so like anxiety, my heart was pounding and everything. And when I get really nervous, I stutter and I like my voice shakes. And so I think he thought that I was intoxicated because he had me get out of the car. And this was when I was at my like most dysfunctional adult age, and like literally my car was stuffed. It was just so disorganized. I had crap all over the place. My back seat was full, my trunk was full, I had papers everywhere. I couldn't find my license, I couldn't find my registration. I was like I think I ended up finding it, whatnot, but he like had me outside the car, and I swear he was about to have me do like the sobriety check because I also didn't have shoes on. So I was just outside in a dress with no shoes on at the side of the freeway in the middle of it was like, I don't know, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And he was like, he was really grumpy and kind of rude. And he was asking me like, what's wrong? Like, why are you acting like this? And I just told him like, I have anxiety. I'm so sorry. And he kind of chilled out after I said that. And I did end up getting the ticket, but yeah, that was terrifying. I think he thought that I was intoxicated or what because of how I was acting. I didn't end up having to do like the walk or anything like that, but he was like doing the flashlight in my face type of thing. And yeah, that was terrifying. But that's my only run-in with the law. um but I also wanted to add that this podcast has changed my life. Like, no doubt about it. One, it's made me so much better at communicating with people. Um, I don't know if you remember from the earliest episodes, but I struggled to like communicate my ideas. I've also, I mean, I've already like you've already seen my issue, I guess, where because of my autism, I have a hard time understanding the natural flow of conversations. So in my past, it was a lot worse, especially like high school. I wouldn't know where the natural breaks in conversations were, and so I would butt in or accidentally speak over somebody, or I would just like, especially with my in my bipolar manic episodes, I wouldn't be able to stop talking, and so I would just like blather on for like half an hour, and would just like straight up talk over somebody because I was more interested in saying what I had to say than actually listening and being part of the conversation. I just wanted to like just say it. And so being in this podcast has helped substantially with that because one, it's helped me see that like I don't know everything and I can't know everything, and that it's important to be as much of a speaker as a listener. I've been exposed to a wide variety of opinions. I've been able to learn how to handle myself in conversations, even if I don't agree, which has been incredibly eye-opening because when you finally have that realization that you are not the only person in the world, that your opinion is not the only opinion in the world, and you hear where people come from, it makes it easier to relate to people in the future because you start to understand what motivates people and why people might say the things that they do, and that the opinions they have aren't always related to who they are as a person. Because I was always the type, I mean, I still kind of do it to a degree where I'm like, if you voted for Trump, you're this certain person, insert insulting term. But it has made me realize that there are ways to communicate your opinions without either shutting down or writing them off, which are things that I used to do. It also has given me an outlet. I used to be that person that every time I open my mouth, they'd be like, oh, again with this topic, like you've told us this like 4 times, because I would be the one like, oh my god, I saw in the news that the coral reefs are dying, and they're like, yeah, okay, thanks for sharing that again. And I was just like so eager to share every single thing that I was learning, and I didn't have an outlet besides writing. And even before that, I didn't even have that outlet because I wasn't regularly writing. But being on the podcast has given me a chance to talk about all these things that I do care about. And so I've become less annoying to all the people around me because now I don't feel the need to just unload all this information on some people, the people around me, because now I can be like, oh, this thing's been on my mind for a while. Let me just plan an episode around it. And it also feels like I'm not just talking at a wall, because with my husband, with my my mom, with whatever, like oftentimes they don't like to hear some of the topics that I want to talk about because, as you know, I gravitate more towards like the world is ending type topics. we're all dying. The world is dying. Everyone's dying. And it would kind of, like my mom especially, she'll always be like, Sydney, can we talk about something else? I don't want to hear this. And then with my husband, he just like, he has a short attention span for stuff like that. And he wants like the gist of it. He wants the summary. He doesn't want all the details. And having this podcast has made it a lot easier for me in my social life because I don't feel that pressure to like unload all my thoughts onto another person because I'm able to do it here in a way that's more constructive. Like getting the feedback from people in the comments is super uplifting. Like I used to think that before I did this podcast, I used to think that I was the only person in the world that felt this way. I was like, does nobody care? Like, am I the only person that actually wants to learn, that actually wants to make the world a better place, that wants the earth to be healthy and happy? But being on here has made me feel connected more to a community that actually thinks the same way as I do. And it's very, what's the word? It helps to feel validated and like be part of these conversations where somebody can be like, oh, that's a really good point, or like, oh, that's a good idea, or like, I never thought of it that way. And even though it's like really small things, it does a lot for my emotional health because it makes me feel like I do have a purpose with the information that I know, and that it has a place to go rather than just like sitting in my head all day. And it's made me feel a lot less neurotic because I'm able to unload my mind, and it's not just sitting and swimming in my head, trying to figure out what to do with it, trying to, and then also feeling like useless because like this information isn't doing anything for anybody. It's like the same way that I felt when I was posting the poetry and was literally only getting my mom to read it, where I was just like, I mean, what's the point of being a writer if like nobody cares about what I'm writing except my mom? Like, of course my mom's going to like my writing because she's my mom. Like, if you don't care about your kid, you're kind of a shitty parent. But anyway, that's beside the point. This podcast has changed everything for me. And it's funny because it's so integral to my life now that if it's like every now and then I'll like fall asleep around 2 or 3 and I'll like my husband will wake me up at like 3:50 and be like, hey, don't you have a podcast today? So even like my family expects me to do this and values my love for this, and they'll ask me, oh, how was the podcast and stuff like that. Like they can tell how much I care about this, and like every chance I get, I bring it up in my class, I bring it up to my friends. It's like the second thing that I say. I'm like, yeah, I'm a writer in I'm in a podcast. So it's become so incredibly important to me, and I enjoy being part of the community so much. I enjoy feeling so welcomed. Like when I first saw you start commenting on my poems on Threads, I remember at the time thinking like, oh God, is he gonna start like simping or whatever? Like, is this just gonna be some guy that like, you know, like those type of guys that are just trying to talk to any girl out there? And I was like, oh no. But then when I met you on the first podcast, I was like, oh wow, he's like super down to earth, and like I enjoyed it so much. And yeah, as I said, like this has become so important to me, and I hate missing. Like I'll literally schedule doctor's appointments around this so I don't have to miss. Like they'll be like, oh, we have an appointment at 3, and I'm like, that's cutting it too close. I can't do that. Sorry. So I deeply enjoy this community, and again, all the other viewers too, like Chef, and I know she hasn't been on in a long time, but Anna and the community members that like the poets that we've had, like you're all such wonderful people. And it's just such a joy to know that I'm not the only one out there that cares about this type of stuff, and that there is a way for me to like reach people in a way that makes me feel good. I always wanted to start my own YouTube channel. Even like high school, college, I considered starting a YouTube channel. It started with watching iCarly because I was like, oh, that's cool, I want to do that. But I just never did because I was terrified of the possible backlash. I didn't feel like I was able to handle the negativity that can come with people online. And even on threads, when I started to come across people that were like anti climate change and anti-democratic, it would really stress me out because I just felt like I don't know, like I didn't know how to handle it. But being on the podcast, it's safe. Like this feels really safe to me, and as you said, like it feels like a family. So I feel comfortable being able to talk and be open and share things that I care about without worrying about retribution or people being like, oh, that's stupid, why would you think that? So it's been such a joy in my life. And as I said, like I promote it everywhere. Like I'm always like, do you want to be on a podcast? I have the place for you. So I very much care about this, and I'm so appreciative to be part of this awesome community. And I thought a good way to end this, I do have poetry that goes over why I write and what writing means to me. So I thought that would be a good way to kind of close off. I also do have poems on addiction. So if we ever do poetry, I do have stuff about smoking. So this poem is one of the first ones that I wrote. These are all from my original, like I'm gonna write a poem a week, poetry write-ups. This one's called The Self, a Poet. Writing to write, or writing to write, with R-I-G-H-T. The achings of prickly ponderings, emotions embosomed, starlit wanderings, wistful wonderings proposed to the moon. I depurate my soul to bring shadow to light, giving fresh meaning to this wandering life, gracing the branches with chatter and flight. I tootle adrift through visceral volumes, exploring the jungles of idiom tunes, leaving the breadcrumbs of all that I learn, enjoying the language in each twist and each turn. With stolid spurning, amending is sought, revoking repetitious resentments wrought, and reliving, releasing with this body fought. Pen to paper soothes deep to the roots by refinding abandoned tunes reused, or reviving words disused. My essay is my muse. Where seeds from the mundane are thrown, meaning is sown, begetting gardens from ashen tones. These palliative posings make one whole by paying back life's passage toll, with raw rhymes flowing slow with time, in flashes of thoughts, in fragile lines. My eager nibs dig in, flitting brittle ditties, recounting the fools drowning in pity and dawning tales of lost decrepit cities. Sunbeams down with omniscience, feeding my urges for prospition. Oh my God, I don't know how to pronounce that. And for thou, I rise and flower loud, reaching sunward, standing proud. Sense bursts forth in baths and brooks, yet as I press my petals into my books, I still pray my people look.
God, and Marco.
My husband finds your soundboard so funny. I remember there was one episode where you like did the me, and he was like, that is so extra. I'm like,
Hey, This is my favorite toy of everything on here is the soundboard. It's things on here that I be wanting to push, but for whatever reason, I gotta keep on re-downloading it back on here. But yeah, shout outs to him, man. Shout outs to him. Shout outs to Carol. Shout out to everybody in the building, man. Appreciate y'all for hanging out. This is the first House of Keys episode that I've done at night. Yeah. So that's what's up.
Another funny with him. When I first started this podcast, I told him like, oh yeah, it's an hour. And of course it's never just an hour. And I remember like it was like an hour 15. He's like, is it still not done yet? And then for the first like couple weeks that I'd do it, he's like, so it's not going to be an hour. And then after a while, he's just like, I've accepted that it's never going to be an hour.
We like you try to stay on schedule, but it's like when you really get into these conversations, time fly, you know. So I try to cut it off at least an hour 30. We are at an hour 35. So, but my bad. It happens like that sometimes when you really be locked in. So, but I appreciate him for being understanding and patient.
And he likes it for me too. He does say he's glad that I have this to do. He sees that it makes me happy. So
that's what's up. We trying to be organic over here. I'm actually getting ready. I'm getting ready to interview 2 people right now. One of them fell flat. 2 of them I'm about to chop it up with here soon. And we're going to have the open mic on Saturday, people. So, yes, it's back. It is back.
Woo. You should email Carol one day, interview Carol one day. She'd be a very intriguing interview. She's in Mexico right now for Worlds, I think. I forgot what level, but she's competing in javelin, discus, and hammer.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, you know where I'm at. Just let me know. We'll set something up. Again, shout outs to you and everybody who tapped in tonight. House of Keys is a show where I interviewed artists and things of that nature. If y'all want to lock in, hit me up. This is just to show love to the people who don't really get recognition for their talents and stuff like that. We're not huge or nothing, but it's the thought that counts. You know, I want to give back as much as I can with what I got. So the regular podcasting will return tomorrow morning, and then tomorrow evening. So if you can pull up, tap in. If not, enjoy the rest of your day, your week. God bless. And do me a solid before you go. Hold on, is it there?
What's the goddamn button?
There it is. Peace.
I know the art of fight. I know the art of war. That's all I ever studied. That's why I'm so feared. That's why they feared me when I was in the ring. Because I was an annihilator. That's all I was born for. And now those days are gone. It's empty. I'm nothing. I'm working on being the art of humbleness. Can you be with me? That's the reason why I'm